The Canada Tug and featuring Tableau Next, the new version of Tableau, which is on the Salesforce platform. So today is really going to be mainly a demo, uh, just so that you can really see the product and we can get into the product. And we welcome any questions you have along the way. I'm just going to start myself just with a few slides that Salesforce has sent us. I think they're helpful just for everybody to kind of get like a framework of how Salesforce is thinking about this and how it fits in with their forward thinking. Um, I'm going to do that first, and then Kirk is going to jump in and do a live demo from scratch in the product. And we welcome any questions as we go along. So if you want to, I'll be keeping an eye on the chat or the Q&A. So if you want, I don't think any of you can unmute, but because of the way this is set up, but feel free to type any questions into the chat or the Q&A, and we can answer them as we go along, just to make it really interactive. And you get to ask your questions. Okay, so starting off, agentic and they're called Tableau Next is agentic analytics because it's on the Salesforce platform and it's got the agents kind of built into it. So this is sort of how Salesforce is seeing the progression of change as they move through these different waves. So we've gone from predictive to generative AI, and now we're in these AI agents, which they're answering with Tableau Next, among a bunch of other agents on their platform. So Tableau Original is sort of how they feel traditional BI has been working with manual data prep, and then human-driven insights. And now they see the traditional BI sort of moving to this agentic analytics where the agents and then the AI will be involved in the data prep, and then kind of pulling out some of these insights. So Kirk is going to probably show you a bit of that today, hopefully, and feel free to answer questions as we go along. So this is the Tableau Next platform, and it sort of consists of 4 different parts. The next sort of visuals will kind of get into that a little bit more. Of course, we always start with the data, and then this has a very intentional semantic model. So a Tableau has always had a semantic model, but we probably didn't call it out as much as we did before. But this is a very intentional semantic model that has to be sort of dealt with before we can get to the visualizations and beyond. So this is sort of the schematic of how this all fits together. So if you start at the bottom with the data layer, which is data cloud, then you have to take that into and make a semantic layer before you can move on to the visuals and then the action layer. So there's some visuals sort of in this slide deck, but we won't spend any time on those because those will be going through in the demo. But this is basically the workspace. So you create a workspace, and that sort of collects all of your visuals in your semantic model and your dashboards, your metrics, et cetera, sort of collects it all kind of in one place. So then the data layer starts with data cloud. So pulling it in from data cloud, which is also on the Salesforce platform. So all of this sort of being connected through that platform. And so that's a sort of a visual of what that seems like. And then the semantic model, of course, is much more intentional. So it's right up front, and this Tableau Next forces you to go through this semantic model to get to the visualizations, where Tableau Original was a little less intentional that way. And then, of course, the visuals as well, which look obviously this experience is a lot more like our traditional Tableau that we would have gotten so used to. And then the action layer we can then move from the visuals and then take actions either through a Salesforce flow. The Slack integration is very good. So, and that's sort of new. That's just sort of been released at the end of September. And that's really very slick. You can kind of run them side by side, either in Slack or in Tableau Next. So that's very seamless. And then you can obviously make an action on a Salesforce record because Tableau Next is not a separate product. It's not outside of Salesforce. It's in Salesforce, and it's in that sort of process. It's very easy to integrate with the other Salesforce components for sure. So of course, they're talking about an agentic analytics platform. So these agents that sit on top of all these layers are there to sort of help Tableau Next sort of pull out those analytics. Data Pro helps us prepare the data. Concierge is sort of more in the visualization layer. And so Kirk will probably show you a little of those today. So without further ado, I'll pass this back over to Kirk, and then he can show you the demo.
Thanks. And thanks everyone for attending or listening after the fact. One thing I wanted to start with, just before we get into the demo and in between Candi's thing, if you wanted another, or you like reading about things as opposed to always getting them on video, I wrote a two-parter. It will be a three-parter on the Fleur-Lez twins. So if you go to fleurleztwins.com, what is Tableau Next, and then one on what is Data Cloud and Tableau Semantic. So we'll look at them today, but just as a follow-up, it might be a good place to look at them. Before we get into Tableau Next, because I think the part that confuses people the most when they hear about Tableau Next, or maybe get intimidated by it, is this whole semantic model, because Tableau doesn't talk about semantic or hadn't previously really talked about semantic models. But what this is Tableau Desktop. This is like Tableau Classic, whatever we're going to call it, Tableau Original OG. This is a semantic model. So behind Salesforce, in the newer product at least, it's a very simple semantic model, but you have orders, people, and as you highlight it, you get them. And then what these are connected. They're not joins. What they are is relationships. And relationships tells Tableau how to do joins at runtime. So on Tableau Tim's channel, he and I did do a whole 90-minute video on data modeling masterclass on this. But just the way this works, I just wanted to point out that what actually happens behind the scenes here is if, for example, we pull regional manager in from that table, that's just an easy query for Tableau to do. And then we wanted to know which customers they had. What Tableau does is at this point, it does an inner join between, and you can come and look here if you're on new versions of Tableau, we can view data model. What that does is it does a join between people and orders to get us the data that we want, right? And then if we were to wanted to bring in a count of returns of those people like this, you'll see the Tableau would then take these two and do an outer join in zero fill it, so we know all the people that haven't even returned anything. There's someone who had 1 return, 2 returns. Anyway, not here to demo this, but just to say that a semantic model is just the metadata around tables, how they relate to each other, and then underneath the semantic model is a heuristic engine that effectively turns what you want it to do into SQL queries at runtime that it needs to be able to do to bring the data back dynamically without you having to write SQL or even understand SQL. So,
okay, just a second before you go any further. Somebody said they can't see your screen. So can everybody give me like a thumbs up if they can see the screen? I can see the screen, but I just want to double check. Yeah, okay. Okay, a bunch of people. Okay. So I'm not sure what's happening for that person. Just
I'm going to share my.
Yep.
I'm going to share my screen again.
Oh, okay.
Just so maybe then that'll help.
Okay.
So anyway, that what I showed, whoever missed it, I don't know if they saw it, is just that this effectively has always been a semantic model in Tableau. Or to be very fair, Tableau didn't have semantic models until the 2020.2 release when it had relationships. Before that, you could only connect or to flat tables basically, or create the joins in Tableau, but it wasn't really a semantic model until that release. So all that to say is that's what's behind it. The other thing that's significantly different, and we're looking at Tableau Next now, just to demo org, and what this is, it's really a lot like Tableau Cloud, except it's built completely on the Salesforce platform, right? So everything we see here is it's some new stuff, some what we would traditionally think of as Tableau stuff, but it's new in that it was completely rebuilt. So it's rebuilt on Salesforce. And what I mean by that is an example of how you would even launch Tableau Next is, for anyone who's ever seen Salesforce before, this is Salesforce. It happens to be Data Cloud, but if you know it, did not mean to do that one. Not that it matters. We could come in here and go to Service Cloud as an example. I've got a whole bunch, depending on what you have installed, right? But one of the things you could launch is Tableau Next. So it's just, in a way, another app on the Salesforce platform, again, which shares a lot of things with the current Tableau like Tableau Cloud, Tableau Server, except on the web, and except on the Salesforce platform. And today, at least, although they're talking about bringing a Tableau desktop version, I'm not even sure why, to be candid, because everything is available in the web. So creating semantic models is available in the web, as is creating new visualizations and dashboards. So if we're here in Tableau Next, you'll see we're in Tableau Next is kind of a traditionally looking Salesforce app that's, again, sits inside the platform. And then one thing you'll often create is a workspace. Again, if you're comfortable with Tableau Cloud Server, this is really just a project. It's just a way to bring information together and secure it. So we could call this the Canada Tug October 25, whatever, call it whatever we want. And then you would probably want to give it a description, which we'll get into in a bit. Okay, as soon as you create one, what you can either do is you can connect to new data, or you can add an existing asset. So add an existing asset, it could be any asset. So we'll look at all these. It could be a semantic model, it could be a dashboard, it could be a visualization. So I could take a dashboard that already exists and pull it into my workspace this way. The UX is different, but it's kind of similar, right? Again, we might already have semantic models that exist, so I could bring those in, right? One thing though, if you want to think about it like Tableau desktop today, or create new workbook on the web in the zero footprint interface, if I can also connect to new data, so I can still connect to data on my local drive as an example, which I'll do for you, and I would show you how you would realistically keep this up to date. But the big difference here being, compared to say Tableau Classic, is that Tableau Classic would, Tableau Cloud, basically Tableau Server, when you can connect to data live, right? So in this case, you always connect through Data Cloud, which we'll get back to in a second. So that means if we bring in files, they're automatically going to get loaded into Data Cloud. Tableau Next makes it easy just to upload them without going to Data Cloud. But I will show you where these go in a second, just because I think it's important to know. So I'm just going to upload those exact same files. I only renamed orders. Remember, we had in our Tableau semantic model, in Tableau desktop, that semantic model we had orders, returns, and people. I just renamed it Superstore orders, so it doesn't get confused with any of the order tables that already exist in Salesforce. But what I can do is I can start with one of these tables and I can bring it in, right? And then what it does right away is it brings in, and much like Tableau, it shows me this, all the fields that are in it and some sample data, right? So what I could do then is I could just save this table, right? Or I could create a visualization directly off it, but we're going to get to that. Or I could say, you know what, I want to create a semantic model and start on this. I could also do it from up here. So let me create a semantic model, and I'm going to create it. All that that's saying is it's also going to bring the data in, right? So you'll see it's copying this comma separated value file we have into a data lake object, which I will show you in a minute. And then the next thing it's going to do is it's going to also create a semantic model for me. So you'll see the data just got pulled in, and then the semantic model gets created. So this is a canvas, much like this canvas. It just, I would say, as we go through this, it's going to be interesting, and I think this will come through. But some parts of the user experience, I think, are much better in Tableau Next, which I'll explain why. And then some are just really immature, and hopefully over time they'll catch up. We'll see, right? But so as an example, I think there's some really good things about this semantic model that I like compared to the Tableau one, which I'll show you, or the Tableau Classic one. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a couple of other data objects. We're going to add a couple of other tables, right? So well, I could have added them. Well, let me add them this way. They're always changing this a little bit, but I'll show you where we would add them anyway. So now we have superstore orders in our model, right? And I want to show you where that actually comes in, right? And then how we could have added more data as well. So if we come back to Salesforce and we come to Data Cloud, which is an app just like Tableau Next is, but if you have Tableau Next, you automatically get Data Cloud. In Data Cloud, there are, if anyone's interested, we could do a whole session on Data Cloud. At Paying with Data, we're also certified Data Cloud implementation partners, but for now we're trying to keep it to the basic core of what you need for Tableau Next. So, but we could do a session just on Data Cloud. So the idea is that there's kind of three main objects, and then the two most important ones for what we're going to do. The first is data streams, and data streams are the process by which data gets ingested. Because remember, like Candi showed, Data Cloud sits at the bottom. It's always there. You could think about it kind of like Hyper is to Tableau, but it's much more robust. It's a complete data lake, and it can connect live to data through something called zero copy. But still, if you're going to use it in Tableau Next, all the pointers have to be through Data Cloud. So you always think about Data Cloud, so it's always underpinning Tableau Next. So data streams are how data gets brought in. You'll see there's a bunch here. And what we should automatically get for a data stream is one called Superstore Orders. Should automatically be here. Oh, it was right at the top. So you'll see that it was a file upload that was ingested, and it was last run. This must be on Pacific time at 10:18. So if I come, the next thing is what a data lake object is a data lake object is a table. Right, you could think about it that way. It's stored independently, like a table be stored in a database. The difference is it can be stored in lots of different ways. In this case, it's our CSV is stored this way. So if we were to click here, what we would see is that we would have all this information about it, and then we don't have any tagged fields right now. We could get into that. So the last thing you'll notice is there's no map fields or tagged fields. What that is we could, even before we get to Tableau, we could enhance this data even further through a data model object. So these are called data lake objects. These are called data model objects. And if you start with Salesforce, what this means is it's basically, think about it as a one-level cleaned up set of tables and relationships between them before you get to the semantic model. It's a step you don't have to take, right? And to do something like Superstore, we're not going to do this because you would need to do it. But for anyone who's worked with Salesforce before, the Salesforce objects, which are tables, right? The Salesforce tables can be very complex. They have a bazillion fields in them because a lot of system type fields. What you would want to do is they get ingested as data lake objects, but then what you would do is you'd want to do a lot of hiding of fields and redescribing of fields and saying how those fields relate to fields in other tables before you even bring them into Tableau Next as an example. So it is kind of like another metadata layer almost that sits in between the Tableau semantics and the data lake objects, where the data lake objects are tables. So again, we could do a whole session on it, but the key thing I think for now is that we have data lake objects, right? And data streams are how they get brought in, right? So I could bring in those other two tables by creating a new data stream. So I'm going to click new here. And then what I can do is I can just, you'll notice that I can just do a file upload. So I'm going to do a file upload. And then I'm going to bring in returns, right? And then I'll show you how you would probably realistically do this. Again, and it lets you do a bunch of things like set what kind of table it is, which again we could get into, what your primary key is, etc. Right? So I'm going to go ahead. Well, let me do it without it. My primary key is my order ID here anyway. You'll see that Tableau makes it a little bit easier to do this with less steps if you just want to upload files, right? So I'm going to bring that in, and then that'll automatically create a data stream, right? And then I'm going to create one more. I'm going to, no, not what I meant to do. But you could do this just to show you that one way, if you wanted to manually update the file, what you could do is you could come back and you could upload a new version on top of it. You obviously wouldn't do that most of the time, so we'll get back to that in a second. Again, I'm going to go new file, upload, and just bring in our last file, which is people, right? And then people actually is a profile, which is interesting. We don't really have a primary key, but that's fine. Okay, so we're going to bring those tables in and deploy them. So again, after they're brought in, you could update them. Again, I could have uploaded these just from Tableau Next, but I just wanted for you to see where they actually came in, right? What you would do in practice probably, right, is we could come back to our data streams. What you would really do if you had these flat files or you wanted to connect to a database for the first time and it wasn't already in Data Cloud, what you would do is you would go new data stream. There's a special one for Salesforce CRM, obviously, to bring those objects in. Partners, et cetera, can build packages to do mappings for you. But otherwise, what you'll see is there's a bazillion databases to connect to, right? So if you wanted to bring data in, example, from Snowflake or Databricks, there would be one for Snowflake, right? And then there's also one for Databricks, et cetera. In here, I'm sure there's lots, right? There's Databricks, Databricks here, sorry. And then, but then what you would want to do if you wanted to bring in files, you'd probably bring them in from either Amazon S3 or, Azure data lake storage, or, if you're using Google Drive, then you could ingest data from Google Drive, right? So again, just to let you know that those are the ways you would do it in practice. But when we're done, we would have these three tables, which are people, returns. Again, we could rename them, and then Superstore, the Superstore orders. Does anyone have any questions on that just before we move on? It is kind of key that I think to understand the data is more than just sitting in, that you can connect wherever. It's always kind of in Data Cloud, which is a big thing. Okay, I'll keep going then. So the next thing we can do is, now remember, we added a couple of new data lake objects. And one of the things I like, we already have Superstore orders. But remember, we also had people and returns. So there's our people.csv, the good thing about leaving that. And then returns.csv. Again, we could have called them what we want. And then here, right away, you can pick, if you don't want fields to come in, much like hide fields in Tableau Classic, we could just tick them off. Do you know what I mean? If we didn't want certain fields to come in. I don't know what the source version is, data source object. Like, we could take this stuff out if we wanted to, right? And then when we take it in, let me show you two of the things I like about the semantic model right away in in this better than in Tableau Classic, if you will. So one is I can add my tables to my canvas without creating a relationship between them. I find this kind of nice that I can put them here at least, like, and then try to organize them. Like Tableau, I have to know Tableau Classic. I, say the desktop or published data source on the web. I have to know ahead of time how the tables relate. So I can put them on the canvas first. That's one thing I like. One thing I don't yet like, but might get good, is this. You'll notice, like Candi said, it's very agent first. And as a result of that, one of the agents is this, I forget what they call it, whatever, Data Pro, I think they call it. This agent.
Data Pro. Yeah.
Yeah,
Call it
Data
Data
Pro.
Pro.
Yeah, they don't expose the name, so I don't. Anyway, so Data Pro, and what I can do with Data Pro is I can show suggestions, and you'll notice it didn't know how to connect these. And let's see if it got this right. So it said an order ID and order ID. So it's kind of good. Like it figured that out for us, that those are the right ways to apply those. And it didn't figure out this one though, right? So orders also connect to people. So I can come here and say I want to connect to people, and then I can do it the old school way, like Tableau, where I go, do you know what I mean? So the way it connects is on region. So it didn't get that right, but if we went back to Tableau Desktop, I could show you that it's on region. So we can add that and then apply it. So that's the first thing that I like, is that I can do this. Again, the suggested relationship, time will tell, right? The other thing I like is that there's a certain order they have to go in effectively in Tableau Desktop, and you don't always know maybe before. So remember, in Tableau Desktop, they looked kind of like, will it behave for me? Yeah, maybe it's because there's not enough of them. So there you go. So we could, if we didn't, like, if you wanted them to look more like a, there's not enough here to do it. But if you wanted to build, this was your fact table, and you want it to look like a star schema, it would never look like that in Tableau Desktop, because all your fact tables have to go in as base tables without getting too gory details. But what's nice here is that I can move these into whatever order makes logical sense for me to what it looks like. So that's the second thing I really like, that I can add to the canvas. Then I can put them where I want. The third thing I really like, again, more than the AI part for this, is that you can test it here, right? And people have asked for this in Tableau forever. So if I wanted to test my model in Tableau Desktop, I have to basically go to sheet one, like I did, and start dragging fields in to understand how the relationship works. But in Tableau, in Tableau Cloud, or sorry, Tableau Next, what I can do is I can actually test it here. So I could say, you know what, I want to know people, what's it called, manager? Well, I want to know how sales are by region or something. So I could go region, right, which comes from that, and then I might want to know measurement. I want to know what are sales by region. Did that work? And I go like this and run, and there's our sales by region. So I don't have to go build a viz to test to see if my model worked. So this is much more like a query analyzer kind of tool, which I think people are going to really like, especially if data people are going to do it, right? So I could keep going and go, we know Superstore well, right? We could go by segment, right? So there it is by, again, it's not meant to be a visualization, but it's meant to say, are we getting the right numbers before I deploy this and have to check? The other thing I can do is I can copy that SQL query, which people have always wanted in Tableau and you don't get. Now, it's SQL embedded in a JSON file, but you can turn around and get ChatGPT or something to turn it into like a true SQL query for you. But in any case, you can interpret the SQL here, which in Tableau Classic you would have to run. You'd have to run a performance recorder and then grab the SQL that was generated from the performance recorder. It's quite an ordeal if you haven't done it before. So these are some really nice features. So now that what we can do is we've got our Superstore orders semantic model. What's nice about this is the semantic model is going to be used. It forces you to effectively do a semantic model, like if you used a published data source in Tableau Classic. It's really good because you shouldn't end up, again, people could write or ask for calculations different ways, like single source of the truth, hard to completely achieve. But this would make it a lot better, or makes the chances of it happening significantly greater, because what happens here is we're going to use this semantic model. And again, we've got much more complex ones as the basis for the metrics we can create. And you can think of metrics we're going to look at as much like Tableau Pulse metrics, or KPI cards, that people are always creating in the Tableau community, and a lot of other BI tools just have KPI cards without having to, create a big number and then put a spark line underneath it. We're going to create our visualizations from this, which is important. So the same, like a sheet in Tableau Classic, and then the concierge agent, which we should get a chance to look at very quickly, will also work off this. So a couple of other things that I like about it as we get into it, we have the same filter sorting kind of thing you would expect, search, like in a model. And again, the team that built this had the advantage over the Tableau Classic team that they didn't have years of baggage of how people were using the product. So they could start from scratch and take all the best practice learnings. But there's a couple things, there's some things we can build into our model. That's where I could have added. So here's where I could have, if I wanted to, instead, what I wouldn't have done is I wouldn't have really gone back all the way to Tableau Cloud. I just wanted to show that to you guys. You could add here. But what we're going to do is...
do you want to show them the checklist first, though? The AI
I'm going to get there before I publish it, for sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So just to show you, if you did want to join two tables together or union data together, and then bring it into your model, this is different. Okay, so in Tableau Desktop, if say we wanted to do a join with people to, I don't know, something else, who their manager was or something, we could hang it off as a relationship, but you also could open this up and we could actually create a join in here. What that would effectively do is to create one single logical table, which was a join of multiple tables. And then the result of that would get joined first, and then it would be able to have relationships with other tables. So in the Tableau Next ecosystem, there are always relationships. So if you wanted to create the join or again union, what you would do is you would create a logical view, right? And in the logical view, I'll back out of this, but like say orders and people, right? We could give it a description, and then it's just a more classic where then we would take our people and orders and we would join them together. I'm worried I don't have time, but that would be, and then that would create another data object like these just in our model that we could bring in and then create this relationship between. So you still can do joins. It's just the way you do joins is through a logical view. Parameters are kind of like parameters in Tableau, but they're not as robust yet. I'm going to skip them for now. What we do have, though, is there are you can do calculated fields here. So again, it would be best practice, but a lot of people don't do it in Tableau Classic to actually build your calculated fields in your published data sources so many people can reuse them, better chance of single source of the truth, and easier maintenance, right? But they don't hear that it's the same thing. You can build it either in your semantic model or you can build it inside your visualization. So again, think of your visualization as a piece of a workbook. So what is kind of nice about this is for calculated fields, they do a good job of it's not just a dialog box where you write a formula in. You'll see that you can add filters in as opposed to, imagine in Tableau, what you would have to do is you'd have to write something like if you wanted the sales for 2024, you'd be like sum if year of order date equals 2024, then sales, right? So here you can write a filter that sits only inside the calculation and not on the viz view without having to write it in your formula. right? And another thing, so we could say another thing that's nice about it is, so we could say if the person equals Kirk, this is never going to be true. And then what else is nice about it is that I have this nice little, I can either go, let's add one more. Will it let me? Yeah. So I can go 1 and 2 together or 3. So I can get that kind of Boolean logic inside my filters, which again, I think is nice. This is always confuses new people to Tableau, at least on how to do this in Tableau Classic. There's some also nice things in it that, that you have on the other ones, but some things you don't have, right? So instead of going back and adding formatting and stuff, it's up here, but you can also let it know whether it's good or bad, without having to write a calculation to say whether it's good or bad outside of this calculation. And then the description is like a comment in Tableau Classic. And again, that rarely gets filled out. It kind of puts it forward here. The last thing that is nice about it is, and I assume a lot of you would know this in Tableau because, if you're on a tug call, but if you want to know the first day a customer ever bought a product, we know is going to be, an LOD, which is tricky for people. It would be like fix customer ID, min order date would be what we would do to get that calculation. But a lot of people might not know that. And it's what makes Tableau maybe a little less accessible to people, right? It's like, but here we could go calculate the first date each customer bought product. Let's see if it gets this right. So we go draft with Einstein. I haven't tried this exact one before, but every other one I try, it usually gets right. There you go. So again, it looks a little more, I kind of like this too, databasey, in that it also tells you which of the tables customer name's coming from. Because if we have customer name in multiple tables, I might want to change this. But you'll notice that it wrote the right LOD calculation for us and automatically gave us a description, which I'll point to next, where Candi said, so I can validate this, make sure it's okay. And the data role is, and because it's a date, I don't get things like up is good or bad, right? So now we have, did it give us a name too? Yeah, first purchase date by customer. I didn't type that in. I did this. It gave it to me. So that's a good field name. I'm going to keep it, right? Then what we would want to do is, one last thing, and then I'll show what Candi was talking about. But you would want to go into each one of these fields, which I'll show you why in a second. You want to edit its properties, and you want to give it a field description. And I'll show you why in a second. And again, you can hide the field like you can in Tableau today. The other really neat thing, though, is this is also where, and this is really good. So when Tableau Pulse rolled out, I really like Tableau Pulse, but it was implemented kind of weird. I don't know if anyone's used it, but you need to have a published data source to use Tableau Pulse. So effectively a semantic model anyway. It won't work off an embedded data source. Like you need an independently published data source. So it's really tied to the data source, but you create it in some completely different place. And it's hard to know, it's not that hard, but it's not super clear what data source it came from. In the Tableau Next world, you create those metrics, like the pulse metrics, directly in the data source. So it's always tied to the data source. So if anybody else wants to come along and add it to a dashboard, it's always available because it's in the data source. It's not in some separate product called Pulse that then you have to find it and add it to your dashboard. It's just available, which we'll see. So we could make one, just to show you what I mean. So we could make one called daily sales, right? And then our measure is going to be sales. Again, you could add a filter. This is going to be, we know our data here, so it's by order date, right? We could say what dimensions we want people to break it down by, kind of like segment and category and those kind of things. I'll just put one in for now. Our identifying dimension is order ID, right? In this case, it's not completely true because you have multiple order IDs. And then like Pulse, you can say what things you want in the write-up, and then you can say it's dollar and dollars, right? So, and again, these would be insight dimensions. So again, we could add other dimensions we wanted to people to do. But I'll show you the nice thing is now this metric gets saved with our data model, and I'll show you why that is kind of neat in a second. So last thing on the semantic model, and then we're going to create a visualization, which is a lot like a sheet, and then a dashboard, and then maybe we'll show the concierge agent very quickly. So in order to turn the concierge agent on, you should do this. So there's a business preferences here, right? Which is nice. Like you can put in a whole bunch of preferences. Like if you know people are going to ask questions, this is specifically for the concierge agent or the agent you can ask questions of, right? So this is where you could write things like this. When they're asking about sales performance, always group by region. If they ask about performance, what they really mean by performance is product revenue, that kind of stuff, which is nice because every company has their own kind of lingo, right? We work with some financial services companies, and tech companies are the worst for this, or you know what I mean? So you'd want to put all that stuff, when they say CAC, they mean customer acquisition cost, or they mean LTV, they mean customer lifetime value, or AUM, they mean assets under management, whatever. You'd put that kind of stuff in there potentially, right? And then the other thing, which I really like, is in order for AI to work well, the concierge AI, the one you can ask questions of your data, right? It'll even tell you things like use proper field names, like use product ID instead of prod ID, right? Clear descriptions, like add descriptions to your fields, which is why I said to do it. Make sure your relationships work, and then make sure that that business thing. And you have to tick all these, even though I didn't do them, right? To say now I can enable that agent. So we will see that agent in a minute, but the agent works at the semantic model level. So again, our visualizations, our metrics, which we see here, and the questions that get asked, like have the semantic model at the center, which is great because you're way less likely to get different answers that way, which is very important. Right. So we now have a semantic model. So we could create a visualization directly from here, right? Or we could go to our, now we're in our candidate tag workspace, if you remember that. And from here, I could create a new dashboard. Well, I should do this just to show things. Again, this is where I could have added new data, right here, not the other place. New data instead of going to Data Cloud. But again, if you want to keep it fresh, you'd have to go to Data Cloud. So I want to show you something people really want, which they get in most BI products. Certainly, like I know Power BI will allow you to do this. Is you don't have to build sheets in Tableau speak before you build a dashboard. You can just go to the dashboard and build your sheets as you go, right? So they have some default templates. They really lend themselves, though, candidly, at least today, only to Salesforce data. So we're going to create a blank sheet. So we're going to create a blank dashboard, right? And then it's a different kind of layout, I'll be honest. So where the semantic model I really like, I think it's advanced from where Tableau is today. I'll be honest, there's some things of this I like, some things I like less, but it's definitely not as mature. So we'll see this as we go. But right off the bat, you can add multiple pages, which are effectively dashboards within a dashboard, right? Slightly different. I'm going to delete that. We can name these pages, of course. This could be our sales dashboard or what have you. So one thing, remember, so we won't go through all of these today, but you'll notice there's, I got dashboard properties here. It's already open, add page. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a metric, right? And remember, we added that metric already. So what I do is I click on it, and then it comes down like this, and you put it somewhere on your page. Everything's floating. There's no concept of tiled really in the product, right? So now we can add our metric, right? And what we can do is we only have one, which is daily sales, right? Because everything's driven from the semantic model, and there's our daily sales one. What is kind of neat is it's a bit more modern looking, you'll notice I can turn things on and off. I can say if filters affect it. But for design, like not only does it have rounded corners, it only has rounded corners, right? So if I were to call this our CA tug dashboard, as an example, dashboard, and save it, and then we can preview it a lot like the preview in, you'll notice it's got rounded corners, and we could set, we could have no borders, whatever you want. Again, I set these borders over here, and you can change colors and apply to all widgets when you're done, which is kind of nice. The next thing, though, like I mentioned, we could have created a visual just like you create a sheet in Tableau, but you can actually do it even if it doesn't exist, which I think people are going to like, who are especially coming from, say, Power BI or something, where I could say, I want it to take up this much space, and I want to add a visualization. You'll notice I don't have any. I could go find one from other workspaces, right? Like there are a lot of that I have, but if I want to take from this workspace, but you'll notice down here, I could create a new visualization from here, from that semantic model. Again, you can add multiple semantic models to the same dashboard, just like you can have multiple data sources within the same workbook in Tableau Classic. But you'll notice this is the part that looks like Tableau the way we know it today, like the Tableau desktop or web authoring experience. And this all the time is getting new things, right? So there's a scatter plot, there's a donut, of course, because Salesforce loves donuts. There are lines, of course, dot matrices, stack bars, regular bars, and a table. So what we could do is, if we wanted to show sales by segment or something, it's like the Tableau we know, except that you can't double click. Anyway, but I can go segment, right? Well, let's do this. Let's do sales over time. So again, a lot like Tableau, I got people return superstore orders. So here I could take our order date, and like Tableau, I could say I want it to actually be a date value instead of a date part, right? All months over time. And then we could take sales, wouldn't that be in orders? Sales. If we put sales on there, just like Tableau, it knows that's the chart we're all used to looking at, right? And then what we could do is we could take something like segment, and we could take segment and drop it on color. So forget about that being a horrible chart. And then, we can do whatever. You can do custom colors and all that kind of stuff as well. So, but again, forget about this being a horrible chart, just to show we could change it to a stack bar. I find that doesn't always work that well, but we could do that. The color. Here's our. So again, right, that didn't make sense, but we could have put product category on color instead, as an example, right? So again, I've got that at too low a level of detail. But you get the idea anyway.
It took your order date off the call of the.
I actually don't want order date on, I guess.
Yeah.
There you go. Right. So, and then it's got a good point. It's got entire view I could do here, kind of like Tableau. Anyway, what we're going to do is, again, it has some other things on it, but definitely you can't do everything on here. It has a filter shelf. It would do, not all the analytics are on yet, but it's got a forecast. If I save this, it's going to save it. Only have measure fields. What? Yeah, it's buggy too so far. I'll be honest. Let me go back to this. Shouldn't have played around. Let's see if this works. Okay, and then it should be on our dashboard if we go back. So here it is on our dashboard. It's interesting. It pops up windows all the time, but it doesn't pop up browser windows. It does inside the app itself, right? But anyway, you could replace it in Tableau. And this is kind of the basics of, there are some things that are similar. So it's interesting. Filters are a little different of how you show them on a dashboard. You can do, but there's some other kind of neat things. Like you can do toggle buttons, right? Which have designs. And then the way that you do filters is you would go list, if you want to do a quick filter, that is, right? And then we would pick this, and then um, we would say we want to filter it on category is an example. And then we could say down here, which ones do we want to have the filter impact, right? But again, this should, if we were to go to preview, and then we went just furniture, I guess I should have picked segment to make it more obvious, but you'll see it did change them, right? So it's a little different. Again, I think in some ways more modern looking, in some ways less. We debate this all the time, depending on which part you're talking about. And then we could add text, buttons, and containers. So it's interesting, at least today, you can't, at least I haven't found a way to get rid of these axes labels and stuff, or to put a proper title on it. So the way you would do it is you would put a container on like this, right? And then we could take this container, and then we could add a text box to the top of it. And then you would take this and move it into the container. And then it would move with the container. It kind of snaps to the container. And then we could just drop a text box. Whoops. We could grab a text box and put it here and go whatever we want it, sales over time. So it's definitely got a bit different. I just want to make sure that we don't. Now, if you preview, you'll notice I didn't set a thing around the outside of it. So so it didn't have by default, it doesn't have lines around it, a lot like Tableau. Just the last thing I want to show is that this is the way the agent works. So if you click up here on this little Astro thing, I don't know why it's this is where at least you should be able to, but see, I didn't describe the model that well. I'm not sure how it works, but if I'm going to say, what were my sales by, this thing has to get cached, so we'll see if it works or not, by segment, right? So if we ask that question, there is going to be an agent that comes like Tableau agent that will actually build a viz for you. It's not in the product yet. But again, they just get released all the time. What this will do is this will actually try to answer this question by giving me a chart, and it will tell me where in the semantic model it got the answer from, if it works for me. But anyway, the idea is after this thing's been cached, you can actually take this agent, right? Because it's tied to a data source, a semantic model, and you can put it inside the Salesforce, like a lightning, if you know Salesforce, inside like a record, and people could ask questions about a customer or something directly, as long as that data were modeled in the semantic model. Again, and they give us kind of underpowered demo orgs. It would usually have at least failed by now if it wasn't going to work. But if it does work, what it'll do is it'll give me, it'll actually give me a little chart over here to break it down. Because again, this is meant to exist independently, at least over time. So you initially have to launch it from a dashboard now, but I think in the future. So the idea is these metrics, which again, you can put alone inside a Salesforce page. The dashboards, the visualizations, and the agent are all getting their answers from the same semantic model. And it's very different than other trying to get LLMs to answer questions on data, because if you think back to where I was with Tableau Classic, what it's actually doing is it's taking what people are asking, it's passing the semantic model, and the semantic model is figuring out on your behalf what SQL it needs to run to do it, because it already knows your data and it already has your data modeled. So it's way smarter than just a standard trying to get an LLM to get questions out of your data. So I'll wrap there with at least 3 minutes left for questions, 3 or 4 minutes left for questions if anyone has any.
Okay, there is a question in the chat about, if there's a trial or a demo environment of Tableau Next that we can access and explore. So there was one because there was a Tableau Next hackathon, which ended mid-September, like the 18th or something. Um, so other than that, I'm not sure that there's a current one unless you're going to Dreamforce, because you can get one at Dreamforce. But I anticipate that there will be in future. Like, because they're short term. They're like, I don't know, if you request a demo org, they're usually 14 days. Because you get access, because of course you get access to data cloud, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a big org. But so yeah. But unless you know anything different, Kirk.
I do not. Solutions, um, products, Tableau Next. Yeah, we should try to follow up on that. Yeah, it doesn't appear obvious on how to get one for sure.
Yeah. So I would just make sure that you there is a Tableau Slack channel, a community Slack channel. So if you haven't joined the Tableau community Slack channel, this is a good excuse to, because there will be announcements in there for sure. But yeah, it's I agree. It's interesting to see it in action. And there's lots of improvements coming every day. Like and then the Slack integration is, it's very, very interesting. It's very slick, much slicker than, like, you think that the Tableau integration of having like a widget in Slack to like be able to post stuff was pretty slick, but the Tableau Next and the Slack integration is much more seamless. And so that's it's coming too.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone.
Yes, thanks everybody for attending. And there was a recording for this, so we'll be posting the recording in YouTube, so you guys can have a look out for that, and we'll hopefully talk to you soon.